minus 20 degrees Celsius. That is not a metaphor. That is not an exaggeration. That is the recorded temperature in Seoul during the brutal winter of January 2024, when the Han River partially froze and news anchors warned people to stay inside. And yet, inside Korean homes across the peninsula, families sat barefoot on their floors. Children played on the ground without socks. Elderly grandmothers slept directly on heated tiles, with nothing but a thin mat between them and the warmth radiating from below. No space heaters, no electric blankets, no thick rugs layered to keep the cold out. Just the floor. Think about that for a moment, because what you are about to discover is not a modern innovation. It is not a technological breakthrough that some engineer in Seoul invented last decade. What you are about to learn is one of the oldest heating systems ever developed by human civilization. A system so effective, so elegant, and so deeply embedded in Korean culture that it survived invasions, wars, colonization, and modernization, and most of the world still has no idea it exists. This is the story of Ondol. Imagine the Korean peninsula in winter, mountains rising sharply from the earth, their peaks draped in white, wind cutting across the plains from Siberia, relentless and merciless, rivers locked beneath ice, villages huddled against hillsides, smoke rising in thin gray columns from below ground level, not from chimneys, from the ground itself. This is the landscape that shaped Korean architecture for over 2,000 years. A landscape so brutally cold that survival demanded something extraordinary from the people who lived here. Korea sits at a latitude comparable to Central Europe, but its continental climate creates winters that feel far more punishing. There is no maritime buffer in the north, no gentle Atlantic influence, just cold, hard geography. Now look at a traditional Korean home, a hanok. Notice what is missing. No fireplace in the center of the room. No raised wooden platforms with air circulating beneath. No central heating system running through the walls. The rooms are low, the ceilings are modest, and the floor is everything. Korean culture literally organized itself around the floor. You eat on it, you sleep on it, you welcome guests to it, you bow to elders while kneeling on it. The floor is not merely where you place your feet in Korea. The floor is the heart of the home. And once you understand why that floor is always warm, nothing about Korean domestic life will seem confusing again. Here is where the mystery begins. The year is uncertain. Archaeological records suggest the earliest forms of Ondol date back somewhere between the 1st century BCE and the early centuries of the Common Era. Some researchers point to evidence from the northern Goguryeo kingdom, one of the 3 ancient kingdoms that once divided the peninsula. Others trace primitive versions even further back into prehistoric settlements found in the northern regions near what is now the border with Manchuria. But here is what makes archaeologists pause. The system they found was not primitive. It was not crude. It was not the kind of technology you associate with early human settlements struggling to survive. What they uncovered in those ancient sites was a sophisticated, deliberately engineered network of channels running beneath the floor, connected to a fire source at one end and an exhaust point at the other. Someone, thousands of years ago, figured out that hot gas and smoke could be routed beneath a living surface to heat it from below. They figured out the angles, the gradients, the airflow dynamics, without modern engineering, without thermodynamics textbooks, without computers modeling heat distribution. They figured it out through observation, through failure, through generations of quiet, cold winters where the wrong design meant people died. And the design they eventually arrived at was so correct, so fundamentally sound in its physics, that it remained essentially unchanged for roughly 2 millennia, 2,000 years. Let that number sit with you. So, how does Ondol actually work? This is where the investigation deepens, and where what sounds simple reveals itself to be startlingly complex. The traditional Ondol system begins with the agungi, the firebox. Picture it positioned at the outer wall of a room, usually in the kitchen or at a lower elevation than the living space. Wood burns inside, hot combustion gases, not flames, not embers, but the actual flowing heat of fire, are channeled from that firebox through a series of flat stone passages built beneath the floor. These passages are called gorai. They are shallow, sometimes only a few inches tall, covered with flat stones and sealed with clay mortar. The entire system functions like an underground labyrinth of heat highways, carrying warmth from one end of the room to the other before venting out through a chimney at the far wall. Now, here is the first critical detail that separates Ondol from every other heating system in history. The heat travels horizontally, or even slightly upward, not down. This is critical. Cold air sinks, but the Ondol floor pushes warmth up from below, directly into the body contact zone, exactly where a sleeping or sitting person makes contact with the surface. Western radiators heat air near walls. Forced air systems heat air near ceilings. Ondol heats exactly where you are. The second critical detail is thermal mass. The stones used in traditional Ondol floors, often granite or similar dense materials, absorb heat slowly during the fire and release it slowly afterward. A single fire in the evening could keep a room comfortably warm until morning. The floor becomes a battery, a slow-release thermal battery made of rock. The third detail is the exhaust management. This is where Korean ancestors demonstrated a level of engineering intuition that genuinely surprises modern researchers. The gases flowing beneath the floor contained carbon monoxide, the invisible, odorless killer. Getting the chimney design wrong meant death. Getting the gradient wrong meant backdrafts. Getting the junction angles wrong meant uneven heating, with some parts of the floor scalding and others cold. Korean builders developed specific methods for testing their systems before occupying a room. They would light fires and observe the smoke behavior, check for leaks, feel the floor surface for hot spots. This quality control process, entirely empirical, entirely practical, was passed down through families of master builders for generations. We are talking about ancient Korea developing what modern HVAC engineers now call radiant floor heating. The same principle now found in luxury European apartments and high-end hotels. The same technology being marketed today as cutting-edge sustainable design. Korea had it 2,000 years ago. But here is the discovery that changes everything. In the 20th century, as Korea modernized rapidly through the compressed industrialization of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, something remarkable happened. Instead of abandoning Ondol the way other modernizing nations abandon their traditional heating methods, Korea adapted it. Engineers and architects made a choice that, in retrospect, was either brilliant or obvious, depending on how you look at it. They replaced the stone channels and wood fires with copper pipes and gas boilers. The principle stayed identical. The heat source changed. The delivery system modernized. But the fundamental physics, heat rising from beneath a dense floor surface, remained exactly as it had been designed millennia before. This modernized system is called Sujik Ondol, or just Ondol in everyday speech. Today, nearly every apartment building in South Korea, from modest studio apartments in Incheon to luxury residence overlooking the Han River in Gangnam, uses this system. Hot water heated by a gas boiler circulates through pipes embedded in the concrete floor, and the concrete itself becomes that thermal battery. The floor temperature is adjustable. Thermostats control water flow. But the concept, identical to what Goguryeo builders were constructing when Rome was still a republic. Now, consider what this means for how Koreans live. The absence of chairs in traditional Korean rooms was not an arbitrary cultural preference. It was a logical response to an engineering reality. If your floor is warm, you sit on it. You sleep on it. You gather around low tables on it. Furniture that elevates you away from the floor would be counterproductive. The warmth is down there. The comfort is down there. Korean floor culture, the habit of removing shoes at the entrance, the preference for floor seating, the tradition of sleeping on mats called yo, is not separate from Ondol. It is Ondol. The technology created the culture, or perhaps more accurately, the culture and the technology evolved together, each shaping the other over centuries until they became inseparable. Here is where this story becomes something more than engineering history. Ask yourself, Why did this system persist when so many other ancient technologies were abandoned or replaced? Part of the answer is straightforward. It works extraordinarily well. Radiant floor heating is genuinely superior to forced air systems in terms of comfort. It heats bodies, not air. It creates no drafts. It produces no noise. It maintains even temperature distribution. Modern thermal comfort research consistently shows that people find radiant floor heating more comfortable than any other system at equivalent temperatures. But the persistence of Ondol is not purely functional. Something deeper is operating here. There is a psychological dimension to floor heating that researchers in environmental psychology are only beginning to articulate. When a floor is warm, it triggers something primal in human comfort response. The ground, normally a source of cold, of contact with the Earth's surface, becomes a source of safety and warmth. It reverses an expectation that is literally built into our evolved nervous systems. Cold below, warmth above. Ondol inverts this, warmth below. The ground itself becomes shelter. Some Korean scholars have argued that Ondol is not merely a heating system, but a philosophical one. The idea of warmth emanating from the earth, from below, from the foundation. This resonates with deeper Korean cultural values around groundedness. Family gathered low and close, hierarchy expressed through closeness to the floor rather than elevation above it. Whether or not you accept the philosophical interpretation, the psychological reality is observable. Walk into a Korean home in winter. Remove your shoes at the entrance, and you will be asked to, without exception. Feel the floor beneath your socked feet. Feel the warmth rising through the material. There is something deeply, inexplicably comforting about it that goes beyond temperature readings. It feels like the house is alive. There is also an economic angle worth examining. South Korea's rapid modernization created one of the most densely populated urban landscapes on Earth. Apartment living is the dominant housing form. In apartment buildings, traditional firebox-based Ondol was obviously impractical, but the alternative most countries adopted, radiators, forced air, baseboard heaters, would have required Korean residents to fundamentally restructure their domestic habits, to get chairs, to raise their beds, to stop living on the floor. The decision to adapt Ondol rather than replace it was therefore not just an engineering decision, it was a cultural preservation decision. Whether made consciously or unconsciously by the engineers and builders of that era, the effect was the same. Korean domestic life continued on the floor. The culture survived modernization intact. Now consider the alternative timeline. Suppose Korea had adopted Western heating systems wholesale in the 1960s. Suppose the floor had gone cold. Would Korean families still remove their shoes at the door? Would they still sleep on mats? Would the Ondol-adjacent habits of sitting low, gathering close, organizing the home around floor-level living have survived? Almost certainly not. A cold floor changes everything. Today, UNESCO recognizes Ondol as an intangible cultural heritage. But for Koreans, it's not a museum piece, it's standard. In the West, radiant floor heating is a luxury upgrade. In Seoul, it's a basic right. And as we face a global energy crisis, this ancient tech is suddenly the future. Because heating a massive floor battery at lower temperatures is far more efficient than blasting hot air into a drafty room. We're seeing it everywhere now. German engineers, Scandinavian designers, and American green builders are all looking back 2,000 years to solve tomorrow's climate problems. But the real mystery isn't the how, it's the who. Similar systems appeared in ancient Rome and across Central Asia. Was it a shared secret along the Silk Road? Or did humans everywhere simply look at a fire, look at the cold ground and ask, what if the warmth stayed below us? History doesn't have a perfect answer, but as families in 50-story skyscrapers sit barefoot tonight, eating and sleeping on a surface that feels alive with warmth, they don't need an answer. They have a home that feels warm from the ground up. It always has. The fire is just different now.